It's good to be back, old friend. It's games like this that make me miss when the RTS genre was still a thing. I'm not exactly sure when it died, but the genre definitely dissipated after a while, with most of my favorite studios receiving the old EA hug of death. There's been some exceptions recently though, so hopefully that's a sign of good things to come. What Empire at War does better than most games is how well it ties its theme with its gameplay elements. Somehow, in the vast and oversaturated market for Star Wars games, this small strategy title captures the feeling of Star Wars better than any other game I've played. Considering this came out in 2006, a time when Star Wars games were at their peak, that's definitely impressive. I remember the hype that 10-year-old me had when I stumbled across the promotional website, which included a peek at all the vehicles that would be in the game and their specs. The whole thing was a super nice touch, so it's a shame that any remnant of that site has been obliterated from existence. I actually was able to find it on the Wayback Machine, but in order for the site to run, you needed to have Flash Player, and that's not something that the Wayback Machine can archive. But at least it proved I'm not crazy, I guess. It's just one of those things that games used to come out with that would get you excited in anticipation, but is no longer really a thing. Like a creative game manual inside the box, or a full-priced game without microtransactions. I promise you my love for this game comes from more than just the tint of my nostalgia sunglasses, though. There have been plenty of phenomenal-looking Star Wars games that I love too, but they tend to lack many original ideas and just rely on slapping the Star Wars paint job on to make their games more enjoyable. Obviously, that paint job is on every inch of the screen in this game too, but there's a lot of visuals here that make me think, hey, that's a nice touch. Constructing the Death Star starts this countdown timer on screen that's also visible if you're playing as the Rebellion, which feels really tense and makes completing it feel as monumental of an achievement as it deserves to be. And when you do finally move the big ball of death from one system to another, it does this slow, dramatic creep that gives you just enough time to admire the peaceful-looking destination before you delete it from the map. Overall, I love the presentation of this game, even though it has plenty of flaws. It feels closer to the rugged style of the original trilogy rather than the overly shiny and pristine look of the sequels and prequels. Things can look a bit rough when you get up too close, but in general, the space battles look a notch or two above the land battles. Any nitpicks I have about the look of things, though, is completely overshadowed by just how incredible this game sounds.
Tartan crews are reporting. Our factories are ready. Awaiting your orders.
Space station damaged.
Copy, sir.
Hurry up! They managed to get out a distress call. Get to the uplink.
I'd consider this high quality for this type of game today, let alone 2006. On the other hand, the environments themselves are a bit of a different story. Things can look a bit low poly even for the time, but it's pretty easy to look past that considering there's over 80 different planets that all have unique appearances. It's not just different shades of green either. They're noticeably distinct from one another, which is really cool and makes me feel a little bad when I decide to demolish one before I've even stepped foot on it. You can also play as the Rebellion if you prefer the one being demolished. Think of the Empire as being the more aggressive faction. One-on-one, they almost always feel more powerful than the Rebels, so brute force goes a long way with them. Whereas the Rebellion needs a more methodical approach, finding the Empire's weak points and striking at just the right time. There's more room to be sneaky with the Rebellion since you can raid planets directly with a smaller force in order to avoid whatever space defenses the Empire has set up. It has an asymmetric feel to it that I think fits really well with a Star Wars game. The Rebellion isn't meant to be able to strike head-to-head with the Empire. They're supposed to be clever in their attacks if they're going to have a chance of winning. That being said, I do wish this game pushed that asymmetric design even further at times. While the Rebels definitely play differently than the Empire overall, I don't get the feeling that they have to stick to the shadows and hide their location of their secret base from the gigantic and expansive Empire. Nope. The Rebel base is right over there. The Rebels typically have an equally large chunk of the galaxy as well, so the Empire isn't exactly giving off the overwhelming and intimidating presence I was expecting it to have. I also find it kind of funny when the Rebels invade a planet and the locals decide to help the Empire in defense.
Congratulations, you are being rescued. Please do not resist.
Truthfully though, good asymmetric design in a game is really tricky to pull off, especially when it comes to balancing. So maybe this is a bit of a be careful what you wish for scenario. The heroes in this game are as important as they are in the movies. They all have unique powers, ships, or abilities that end up being as useful as a large army. These abilities cover a wide range of bases too. You can utilize characters like Han and Chewie to spy on the enemy units and steal credits from lucrative systems, while also benefiting from more tactical powers, like Mon Mothma reducing the price of all items on the planet that she's located at. An ability that is so good, you'll start moving her around the map like your personal galactic coupon mom. But be careful how well you're defending her though. Most of the heroes will respawn after they die due to their gold-plated plot armor, but depending on the game mode, Mon Mothma's death will outright lose you the game. Which makes sense, because from what I can tell, she's one of only 2 females in the entire galaxy, so if we lose her, humanity's fucked. Each hero offers something different, which adds a really enjoyable extra dimension to this game. Even during combat, they add a new layer to the strategy and can influence your plan of attack. Or they can also just be fun to watch.
No, you are gone!
I'm so glad they got this right too, because so many Star Wars games just shove lightsabers in front of your face, when there's really a lot more gameplay elements that these characters can add. Shortly after this game came out, the developers released its first and only expansion, Forces of Corruption. And boy, does it make me wish they added more. Not only does it add a whole new faction and story campaign, but it adds even bigger and better units for both the original factions. Like, much bigger. Much, much bigger. If the base game was Episode 4, this is Empire Strikes Back. Considering how much of the rest of the game is leaning on the source material, I was a little surprised they decided to create an entirely new faction based around their own ideas and designs. I was even more surprised at how well they pulled it off. A criminal and corruption-based faction fits perfectly in between the 2 original polar opposite ones. They really leaned into the asymmetric gameplay with these guys too, where most of your time is spent spreading corruption from planet to planet, forming a criminal network. They're a lot of fun, mostly because of how differently they play, although it does become a little less fun when you decide to play against them. These guys definitely fall on the overpowered side. I mean, Christ, I looked away for 5 seconds and they blew up my entire Death Star fleet without even initiating a battle. The campaigns in the base game are probably the best place for new players to start. They offer a good introduction to the mechanics and even include some story elements.
Area looks clear. The Imperial uplink should be just up ahead.
Oh dear, this humidity will certainly not be good for my circuits.
Cut the chatter, you two. The sooner you get to that terminal, the sooner we can all get out of here.
R2-D2 is ready for retrieval. Good job.
We did it! We did it!
Yeah, they're a bit goofy, but I also find them more on the charming side. What's good is it doesn't take itself too seriously. Not sure I can say the same about most other Star Wars games.
You've taken everything from me!
Your feelings for her are not real.
They are real to me!
Oh boy. It has a lot of the normal Star Wars beats, but the cutscenes move quickly and don't overstay their welcome. I mean, it's the Empire versus the Rebellion. You know the deal. They're using a mix of voice lines from the movies and their own recordings that sound pretty great overall.
This is the Kuat shipyard. We have come under rebel attack, requesting assistance.
The Tyranny is on Imperial security assignment. Maintain channel silence for ceremony communications.
There's also the occasional guy they dragged in from accounting.
Identify yourselves. Send your transponder codes now. Unidentified ships, you are trespassing in Alliance space. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded.
But like I said, it still comes across as charming. Considering how many main characters from the films are included in this game, I'm impressed with how believable most of them sound. They basically hired what I guess are professional Star Wars impersonators, and most of the time, they're pretty convincing. Most of the time.
Cover my approach.
Calculate every possible destination along their last known trajectory.
Leave nothing alive.
Activate the tractor beam.
The actual gameplay exists in 2 parts. First, you have the galactic map, where you control planets, build units, upgrade your bases, and manage your faction. Then there's the real-time combat once you move your units into an enemy territory. It's basically the closest we'll ever have to a Star Wars Total War game. As someone who's a huge fan of the Total War series, I actually prefer Empire at War when it comes to the flow of these games. most Total War games excel at creating real-time battles at truly epic scales. But those heavy and long-lasting combat sequences start to feel a bit tedious when you have to repeat them over and over again across the span of a whole campaign. Anybody who's familiar with this knows just how much of a relief it is that they include an auto-resolve feature. Since this game shares the same rhythm as those games, it's nice that the auto-resolve feature is present in Empire as well. But here's the thing. I found myself using that feature significantly less throughout this game for one crucially important reason. The combat is a lot faster paced in Empire, with an apparent clear winner after only a few minutes. And yet, the combat is still able to hold on to that grand scale and excitement that these games do best. I'm even a huge fan of the nuances within fighting itself, like being able to target the specific parts of each ship. It adds a deeper layer to the strategy and lets me pretend like I actually know what the fuck I'm doing. Where I start to have a problem with this game is in that first part, the galactic map. It pains me to say that, because there's so many things about that part of the game that is done really well. Managing my defenses across the galaxy and setting up choke points is a difficult puzzle, but one that I really enjoy doing. There's always something that can be improved within your setup, but it's as much of a battle with your unit capacity and treasury as it is with the enemy. Grabbing control of another system will increase the amount of units you can have spread out across the galaxy. But if you focus too much on spreading wide rather than building tall, you could end up being picked apart from the inside out. So with as much precision and attention as this puzzle demands, it's baffling to me that solving it has to be done in real time. Imagine playing any Total War game, but instead of planning things out turn by turn, you have to upgrade buildings, manage your forces, and move troops around the map all in real time. And yes, I'm well aware that there is a pause button in this game, but you can't manage your units unless the clock is running, so it really only acts as a way to get your bearings when things are moving too fast. So instead of grouping units to have a well-rounded fleet, I'm more just frantically moving them around to defend my weak points. In my mind, there's an easy solution to this. Galactic Conquest should have just been turn-based. Having this part of the game be in real time doesn't really serve a purpose and just makes it more tedious to manage. I think the AI would have an easier time too if that was the case, because, oh boy, the AI has some issues of its own. There always seems to be one planet in particular that the AI becomes fixated on, like a moth to a light. So they start spamming guys there every other minute to try and take it from me, even though I'm repeatedly tearing them a new asshole. It's not because they're lacking the forces either. They just refuse to deploy all the reinforcements they brought and retreat as soon as I take out the first wave of them. Can't make the jump to light speed when your engines are out, bitch! Eventually I got tired of fighting the same battle over and over again, so maybe I'll just auto-resolve this one to see how that goes. Oh yeah, that's right. It's a good thing I didn't feel the need to click it so much, because the auto-resolve can be wildly inconsistent. It feels more like flipping a coin than an actual guess as to who would win each fight. Okay, let's see. One frigate versus my super star destroyer manned by Darth Vader himself. Yeah, okay, nice try, AI. In what fucking universe? It might sound like I have a lot of complaints about this game, but crucially, they're not coming from a place of disdain. They're coming from my enjoyment of it. These issues aren't preventing Empire at War from being a good game. They're preventing it from being a masterpiece. Take one look at the modding community, and it's clear that this game still has an active following 14 years after release. That doesn't just happen by including the Star Wars paint job. The game needs to be able to combine its setting with fun gameplay, and not just rely on visuals and sounds of Star Wars to make it entertaining. The developers clearly understood that and built a game that's greatly enhanced by its Star Wars theme, but isn't using it as a crutch. The mods for this game are so good that it's almost required for me to mention them in order to make this a proper review. There are hundreds of astounding mods that all deserve their own videos, so here's some people who dedicated their time to doing just that. To give you an idea, there are multiple complete overhaul mods which turn this game into that masterpiece I was always hoping it would be. I'm not just talking about updated visuals, although there's plenty of great ones for that as well. I'm talking new factions, balancing improvements, enhancements to the AI, changing the timeline within Star Wars, changing the universe to something not Star Wars. Did I mention this is all on Steam Workshop? So this is a good game that becomes transcendent with mods. It really makes you wonder the potential that a good sequel could offer. For as phenomenal as the mods are, the community is still being held back by its 2006 engine. But I'm not holding my breath for a good sequel, considering you-know-who holds all the rights to it. Wait a minute.
Don't give me hope.